Hey friends, it's Natasha. So today I'm going to compare pathway reading to the Memoria Press literature guides. I was asked to do a video comparing these, and so I thought I would do that for you today. So these are both second grade. So this is the third book for Pathway for second grade. It's the last one. And Little House in the Big Woods is what I would consider the most difficult book in the second grade as well. So I thought these were comparable as far as where they're at, in the second grade year. And so I thought they would be best to kind of compare. Okay, so that being said, I didn't bring the Little House in the Big Woods book, but of course you guys know that is a novel. So the biggest difference between Memoria Press literature guides and, say, Pathway reading is that with the Memoria Press, you are reading actual novels or actual books, where the Pathway reading, you have these books that are together that have a bunch of little stories in them. Okay, so that would be the biggest difference, is that, actual books versus these readers. Okay, so I'm going to actually, before I put this aside, I will show you that this has multiple units, so it has 4 units. But again, this is the third book in the Pathway second grade. And each unit has a couple different stories, and you can see kind of the level of difficulty there. But that's really not what the focus is on in this video, because I think everybody knows the difference between a book and a reader such as this. Okay, but I really wanted to kind of compare the differences between the teacher guides and the workbooks for the kids. Okay, so we'll start with this Memoria Press. This is, that's not the teacher. This is the teacher. Little House in the Big Woods. And so you'll see here, we have the contents, and it lists out each chapter. It has an appendix. Of course, it has teaching guidelines, note on reading activities, and a model lesson plan. So in second grade, they are still incorporating phonics into their reading, and Pathway does as well. So phonics is covered in both programs. Okay, let's see here. You will need some additional books and the flashcards. You will need the phonics book. Let's see if I can show you here on classical phonics. You will also need the phonics flashcards if you are doing the Memoria Press reading program. Okay, so we have pre-reading activities and post-reading activities in the Memoria Press. And in the Pathway reading, we also have pre-reading activities and post-reading activities, okay? So we have that in both. And I'll get more into that in a second. Okay, so we have notes on the pre-reading activities and the post-reading activities. And then we have a model lesson plan, which includes pre-reading, which is a review, study guide preview, pronounce and spell, vocabulary, then the reading, then the post-reading, which is comprehension questions, and enrichment. The enrichment activities include composition, copywork, dictation, research, mapping, drawing, poetry work, literary terms, and more. I think this was a typo here, actually. I think that's supposed to say drawing. And these activities can be completed as time and interest allows. I would say, honestly, the enrichment activities is probably the biggest difference, besides one being books and one being readers. That's probably the biggest difference between these programs. Okay, so in the Memoria Press guide, you have chapter 1, The Little House in the Big Woods, pre-reading day 1. We have new words, syllabication, and phonics flashcards to review. And then this is a copy of the student sheet with the answers filled in. So they have a pronounce and spell, they have vocabulary, they have an activity here, they have comprehension questions to do after they read. Okay, so then post-reading, you'll see that they have phonetic word study with classical phonics and review compound words and decoding. Okay, Now let's take a look at the pathway reading. So as you can see, for the pathway, the teacher guide is just the answers, okay? So teacher edition, this is literally just the answers. So it's a student workbook with the answers filled in. Okay, so that is another difference where this has some information on the side. This doesn't. However, in books 1 and 2, in the teacher guide for that, there are some information on the side. But I would say, in general, what you get from Pathway is straight, and you know, if we're thinking more across all the grades, what you get from Pathway as far as a teacher guide is more answers. And what you get from Memoria Press is answers plus extra, basically. Okay, so how it works in Pathway is you get this working with words portion, and so that's going to be, you know, your vocabulary, and so they're doing vocabulary here too. So we got that, and then for let's see. Okay, so let me actually show you this page. Okay, let me actually show you. Yeah. Okay. So then we have these learning through sounds pages, and these are the phonics pages. Now, in the first 2 readers in Pathway, it has working with words, then learning through sounds, then thinking about the story. This looks a little bit different in the third one. So we've got working with words, thinking about the story, and then learning through sounds. Yeah. And then we have some comprehension practice included as well. So both books, both programs cover phonics. They just cover phonics in a different way, where this has phonics worksheets, okay? These learning through sounds are the phonics worksheets, whereas the Memoria Press phonics is through the book Classical Phonics, where they're going to read, and through the phonics flashcards, and then things like review teaching how to decode compound words by breaking the word into 2 smaller words. Okay, so the phonics instruction is not in the student study guide at all. There's no phonics in the student study guide. So if you want that phonics instruction, you have to get the teacher guide. Okay, so sometimes people will just get the student study guide. I would say actually for this course, the teacher guide is more important, because I think it would be easier to do this orally and have the extra information, you know, without the student study guide. So again, both include phonics and vocabulary. Both include phonics and vocabulary and comprehension. They just include them in a bit of a different way. The vocabulary is set up, you know, slightly different, where here we see the words are at the top. Here we have a little box, but it's still a basic page of figuring out what the words mean. I mean, vocabulary is vocabulary. And then the discussion questions, like comprehension practice here, this is where they're reading this passage and then answering the questions. But the comprehension for the actual stories are this thinking about the story. So let's compare this comprehension questions. I guess I should show you. Here we go. So this comprehension questions is comparative to thinking about the story in Pathway, okay? And it has a very, you know, equitable amount of questions even, okay? So now there are these activities, these enrichment activities here that are in the Memoria Press, such as life was difficult for Laura and Mary when spring arrived. What did they spend their time doing in the spring? Do you spend your time outdoors in the spring? Make a list of things you do in the spring that you can't do in winter. Ma was hospitable. Do you know what it means to be hospitable? If someone is hospitable, they are careful to make their guests feel welcome and comfortable. What did Ma do to show hospitality to visitors? How can you be hospitable when you have guests at home? Write a few sentences listing these things you could do to make your guests feel special. And then we've got this enrichment page here. Fact and opinion, using your manners. So you see there's those extra little enrichment things here. Okay, so there's every so often, there's just a couple of them. There's little enrichment pages. But though Pathway doesn't exactly have that, they do have that extra comprehension practice. So let's see. Get to another comprehension practice. Like this, they have these extra comprehension practices where they're just reading the story, the short little bit, and answering these questions, which this does not have. Now, this comprehension practice is not in books 1 and 2 of 2nd grade. But this is, although I'm trying to compare something that is, equal in terms of grade level, I did just kind of want this to be an overview of what the Memoria Press guides are like compared to the Pathway, because Pathway guides across the levels, are set up very similarly in the fact that the teacher's edition, for the most part, except for in that those younger, the 1st grade, and the beginning of 2nd grade has a little bit more information to the teacher, but as you get older, it's really just an answer key. And so the teacher edition of the Memoria Press has a little bit more for the teacher, But I did want to, compare them, that they both include, at this level, they both include vocabulary and phonics and comprehension, and then the additional activities are different in both. So I hope that was helpful. I feel like it was a bit all over the place, but of course, it is hard to do a compare and contrast type of video, but I actually think they're pretty similar as far as what they cover. I personally love the idea that I can take my kids through an entire reading program and know we're not missing anything. And so that is why I have chosen to use Pathway. At the same time, I find a lot of value in reading actual books and finding enjoyment from books, and so that's where I find the value from these Memoria Press literature guides. And so we kind of did it this year, not fully, but I think we'll do it more fully next year, where we read a unit in Pathway and then we move on to a novel, whether that is Memoria Press or we had some Sunlight readers, but then we're going back and forth like that, so we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. That's kind of what I see, but I just do love the fact that I can go through an entire reading program and know that everything has been covered, because when somebody comes up with an entire reading program 1st through 8th grade, you know that everything is covered. But with Memoria Press, it's also fun because you can buy a complete, grade level package, or you can pick and choose which guides you want to pick up, what books you think your kids might be interested in. So I think that's valuable too. So I hope this was helpful to you and was not too confusing. And make sure you give it a thumbs up if you like this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe if you like all things homeschool. That's what this channel is about. Lots of curriculum flip-throughs and reviews. And so if you like that kind of stuff, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I will talk with you soon.